Welcome to Posts and Perspectives right here on Sook News Television. You know that this segment is about getting feedback from people on social media about what they think about the conversation on the front burners. Here we don't just do the talking, we also pass on the mic to you. So for this, it's pass on maybe Twitter, whatever social media platform you're using to you, so that you can also have a chance to air your views and opinions, your different perspectives on the issues on the front burners. My name is Evelyn Ohiola. I do not do this alone. Of course, the guys are in the studios. They have been doing lots of talking, and I'll still continue to engage them. How are you doing, Priye?
I'm fine, Evelyn. Good morning.
Good morning. Doc, what's up?
The true color of Priye is coming out on a daily basis.
Doc, what's his true color? Is it purple?
Diverse
Is it diverse perspective? Yesterday you were NLC, but today it's different colors.
He's dining with the who is who.
Okay. Priya, we did not see yesterday after the show. Please see me. Let's see now. Show me the way. By the way, it's Thursday, like they say, TBT, Throwback Thursday. Thank God we do not look like what we have been through. I'm sure that if you take a look at some pictures you've taken back, some years back, you'd see that you have really grown, irrespective of where you are today, and sure to be grateful for that which you have. I'm not a preacher. I just thought to share some motivation there. My very first story this morning: Tinubu increases 2025 budget from 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira. That's over some 4 billion naira addition to the budget. Spike Media says if the over 4 billion naira addition to the budget is based on revenue generation, then it would have been good to help reduce our deficit. But if we have some revenue generation based on what some agencies are doing, and we just want to create expenses, then it's not wise enough. We should strive to reduce our expenses, which in turn reduces our deficit. Okay, Okpayemi Adewale has so much to say. He says, good morning to you in the studio. The president should have left the budget the way it is and challenge ministers and directors in charge of MDAs to do more beyond what they did this year. And he says the projections are fine. Still, other factors need to be considered. For example, NUPRC said it costs Nigeria about $40 to produce a barrel of crude oil, whereas it's $10 in Saudi Arabia. And finally, he says, so the president should leave room for economic issues and challenges and then focus on how to make the 49.7 trillion naira budget work and reduce inflation to 15% as promised. And Mr. Okoye says, Reza, I'm talking like Benin person. Reza! So, who should I give this to? Okay, let me do Doc, because Doc has been, saying I'm giving preference to Priye. Doc, what do you think? This over 4 billion addition to the budget. Nigerians believe that. Some Nigerians majorly believe that this 4 billion naira should not have come at this time.
Well, I think everybody has their differences in opinion.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is allowed in a democratic environment. People can have opinion. But for me, it symbolizes or represents some measure of increased transparency in how government businesses are run. That the federal government observed that the agency had capacity, and revenue is actually coming in beyond what was projected. So they needed to factor this into the income for this year. And of course, there's no doubt, Augusto said that the infrastructure deficit in Nigeria will require that the federal government spend an average of between 80 to 150 billion annually for 30 years to be able to fill that gap. The current budget we are talking about is not up to 80 billion. It's not even up to 20 billion.
So you feel we are doing below what we should do normally
to be able to cover the infrastructure gap that is bedeviling the country for 30 straight years. And so if we have opportunity for more money to come in, And then, of course, we have a deficit that needs to be done, and government is accounting to say, well, yes, at the time we were planning this budget, this was the income expected. But now we have seen that there are windows that are opening and more income is going to come in. Rather than allow those money to float, and maybe some people can put hand and remove the floating money and not accounted for.
It's better
government
to
is putting it into an appropriation to say, well, this money, we see it can come. And if it does come, we have to spend it. And then, of course, it's not extra budgetary spending, but it is expended within the framework of the budget. And I think to that extent, it shows some level of transparency and some measure of accountability.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next story this morning. The retirement age for doctors, healthcare workers has been increased to 65, and Ike Oshinowo has this to say. Yes, 65 is a good year, but other factors should be considered, such as being healthy enough to carry out work functions in that added time frame. Abi is asking. And Antonia Dark Flame says 50% of the world's population are under 30 years old. Retirement age should be at least 60 to help the younger people find work. And she goes on to say, Dr. Idausa is right to suggest that retired professionals can volunteer until they want to rest fully. It is practiced in so many Asian countries. See Governor says, as long as a professional can deliver on the job, age should not be a restriction. People start dying once inactivity sets in, not forgetting the experience and knowledge to pass on. What do you think, Priye? You know, there are people that say they are retired, but they are not tired. I mean, we have we have that in place here at Soup News Television. And it's a 5-year-old journalist who is retired, but has refused to, get tired. And, I just had to bring that to connect that to what we are discussing. 65 for healthcare workers to retire. Do you think?
Well, 65 to be retired, well, good. I like the fact that the government had to extend it.
Yeah.
And the reason is not far-fetched, because we need, the health sector has suffered so much brain drain as we speak because of the Japa syndrome, where we have lots of medical doctors in their prime in Nigeria. They've left because...
So you think this is a solution to that, to the brain drain?
It's part of the solution, and the new ones coming into the system will need these older ones to hold their hands and teach them. However, a man 65 is not the man that should be giving back to society. That's except he has made lots of money, because at that age he wants to be very, very comfortable. Yeah. So even if there is nothing and he still wants to do his work, he's just had to work in an environment where he will be compensated and paid. Except he's very, very rich and he's comfortable at that age and he wants to entirely give back to society.
What do you think about volunteering?
Volunteering.
Like they retire at 60, then if you want to continue, then you can volunteer. And
that's why I said except he's earning enough, or he has earned enough and built a life for himself to take care of himself at that old age.
Okay. And you think this
If not, please, the government should make them as consultants who should teach the younger ones in the system to strengthen them because of the brain that we have suffered.
I was about to ask you if you think this would not affect, threaten the younger generation.
It shouldn't. I think there's room for them as we speak now because of the Japa syndrome that has taken place.
All right, thank you.
There's room for them.
Let's move on to the next and final story this morning. Reps probe Telcos over illegal NIN-SIM linkage. Emirati at I_Ikeazota says this is very simple. A lot of innocent persons have been jailed for lack of not knowing that their SIM is linked to so many SIM cards. And he says, continue to say that I hope the House of Rep effects this bill immediately because I have been yearning for this a long time ago. And still Emirati, he says a lot of SIM cards are being cloned with people's NIN. That's how crazy it could be, Doctor. People have actually talked about this for a long time. They've lamented at how, they get a new SIM and it's already linked to, or their own NIN is linked to so many SIM cards.
Well, I think they are just simple issues. Like they say, ignorance cannot be an excuse before the eye of the law. And to that extent, and I think we should be responsible enough and accountable as even citizens. There are some few things that we can do. For example, there are short codes that are available, whether from the telco providers or even from NIN-SIM to understand some certain things that are linked to your system. And I think these are things that can be done from society level. But like I said, while we were having this conversation, there's a whole lot of carefree attitude for people who really do not see the security implication of some certain things. Take, for example, your SIM or your phone is stolen. And you don't bother to go to report to the police to say, I lost my phone and I have lost my SIM card. And the person who stole the phone, in short, it's even worse off. People don't want to even face the rigor of even retrieving the line and go ahead and buy a new line. So all these things are the misdemeanors you see in society that happen as a result of ignorance. I've seen children who, of course, they have a telephone and then their WAEC, NECO, jam was tied to it and they are thrown the SIM away and now they can't retrieve their results because of ignorance. And I think people must understand that whatever thing you carry, your telephone number, your identity card, all these things bear your identity. And that is what's called identification. And that is how you are known. And so you don't joke with it. Once your identity card is missing, you go to the police to report it. My identity card has been stolen. My passport has been stolen. But because people don't want to go through processes, they just go through the shortcut. This one is missing. You
don't think it's because the processes are so rigorous that people believe, I don't want to do that?
Which is cheaper, to go to jail for a sin you didn't commit, or to pass through a rigorous process to ensure that your name is held in sanctity? And I think there's nothing that is worse off than you are paying for a crime you never really committed. But it's important that people know that if a means of your identity is lost, the proper thing to do is to report it to the authority to say this is lost and see how to retrieve it and recover it. Now, in some cases, recovery is also very difficult because at the time that they were buying the SIM, they didn't buy a SIM that has not been registered. They bought a pre-registered SIM, which of course vendors were doing, and they go to Telcos to go and buy so many SIM and pre-register it with all manners of name. And sometimes some people call me and they say, your name on this SIM is Shakura. And they say, oh, that's not my name. That's what Truecaller is showing me, that's your name. And that is the name that SIM is registered with. And that's because people really don't care. And at least you are desperate to get a telephone line. And you just see somebody who says selling SIM on the bus stop and you buy a SIM and put on your phone. And you start to use without really checking the particulars in which that particular SIM is registered. I think that we have to be enlightened enough, and I'm also happy that we're talking about this morning. The viewer out there, check short codes to know whether the phone you are carrying bears your name, and then of course you will be able to know the appropriate authority to report to say this is not my name, and then go to the telco operators so they can help you modify some of those data.
All right, thank you so much. That was so, explanatory. And this is also a call out to the National Orientation Agency to take this up so that Nigerians can be better informed about this. I mean, that is primarily their duty. And that's the end of the segment, Posts and Perspectives on Souk News Television. My name is Evelyn Ohiola, and it's back to the guys in the studios.